The Wanderer broke free from the Vectari ship and jumped to hyperspace before the aliens could respond. The transition was rough. The small frigate shuddered and groaned as it pushed through the barrier between normal space and the strange dimension that allowed faster-than-light travel. But it held together, and moments later they were gone, leaving the Vectari vessel far behind. In the medical bay, Dr. Chris Palmer looked at Jake Dunn with an expression that mixed professional concern with personal amazement. Chris was 40 years old with steady hands and kind eyes, and he had been the ship's doctor for 7 years. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. "I'm going to list your injuries now," Chris said, reading from his tablet. "Stop me if I miss anything. 2nd and 3rd degree burns across both hands and forearms. Electrical scarring along both temples, deep tissue damage to the chest and abdomen, a dislocated thumb recently relocated, 3 cracked ribs, 2 of which have been re-cracked during recent physical activity, a plasma burn along the left shoulder, severe dehydration, early-stage infections in at least 4 separate wound sites, and more bruises than I can count." He lowered the tablet and stared at Jake. "How are you even conscious right now? By every medical standard I know, you should be in a coma." Jake lay on the medical bed with tubes running into his arms and sensors stuck to his chest. He looked terrible. His face was pale and drawn. His body was a map of damage. But his eyes were bright, and he was smiling. "Honestly," Jake said, "I'm not sure. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me stay down." Chris shook his head slowly. "I've read about human endurance in textbooks. I've seen the records of what people have survived throughout history. But seeing it in person is different. You should be dead 10 times over." "Well," Jake said, "I'm stubborn. Ask anyone who knows me. It's my worst quality." Captain Megan Holt visited him after Chris finished the initial treatment. She sat in a chair beside his bed and studied him with an expression that combined admiration, relief, and something like concern. She had known Jake for years. They had worked together on 3 different assignments. She had always known he was tough. She had not realized just how tough. "The Vectari are going to be upset," Megan said. "We just broke into their ship, killed several of their crew members, and stole back their research subject. That's not exactly diplomacy." "They started it," Jake said. "They kidnapped me. They tortured me for 3 weeks. I don't feel bad about anything that happened back there." "I'm not saying you should feel bad. I'm saying there will be consequences. The Dominion Council will want to respond. They might send ships. They might demand we hand you over." Jake's expression hardened. "Let them try." Megan leaned forward. "Jake, I need to know what happened in there, not the details of the tests. Chris can figure that out from your injuries. I need to know what they learned about us. What did they take away from this experience?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. He stared at the ceiling of the medical bay, thinking about 3 weeks of pain and darkness and strange alien eyes watching his every reaction. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "They learned that you can't break something that's already been broken 1,000 times and keeps putting itself back together. They learned that humans don't have a pain limit. We just have varying levels of annoyance." He turned his head to look at her. "And they learned that when you hurt us, we don't surrender. We get motivated." Megan absorbed this. "What do you think they'll do with that information?" "I think they'll be scared," Jake said. "They expected to find a weakness they could exploit. Instead, they found out that their best weapon doesn't work on us. Pain is their tool for conquest. They use it to break species before they invade. But you can't use pain against someone who treats it like a minor inconvenience." He smiled, though there was no humor in it. "They wanted to find humanity's weakness. Instead, they found out why every other species should be worried about us. Pain doesn't stop humans, Captain. Pain just makes us angry, and angry humans have a way of becoming everyone else's problem." The Wanderer traveled for 6 days before reaching Earth Station Prime, the largest human outpost in this sector of space. Word of Jake's rescue had spread ahead of them. When they docked, a crowd was waiting at the airlock. Jake was transported to the station's main medical facility for further treatment. Over the following weeks, he underwent surgery to repair the worst of the damage and therapy to help his body heal. He gave testimony to military officials about his experience. He answered questions from scientists who wanted to understand what the Vecthari had learned. Through it all, Jake remained calm and practical. He did not complain about his injuries. He did not express anger at his captors. He simply told his story, answered the questions, and waited for his body to recover so he could get back to work. His story spread. At first, it traveled through official channels, reports to governments and military commands, briefings for diplomats and intelligence agencies. But soon, it leaked beyond those boundaries. News services picked it up. Social media shared it. Within weeks, Jake Dunn had become a symbol of human resilience across the colonies. He hated the attention. He refused interviews. He declined invitations to speak at events. When reporters asked him about his experience, he gave short, dismissive answers. "I didn't do anything special," he said in one of his rare public statements. "I just didn't quit. Any human would have done the same." But privately, to those he trusted, Jake was more thoughtful about what had happened. One evening, sitting with Captain Holt in a quiet bar on the station, he tried to explain. "They kept asking what we are," Jake said, "like we're something strange and dangerous. And I kept thinking, we're just humans. We're not special. We're not superhuman. We just don't know when to give up." He took a sip of his drink. "My grandfather worked in a coal mine for 40 years. Every day he went down into the dark and did back-breaking work that was slowly killing him. And every night he came home, ate dinner with his family, and went to bed so he could do it again the next day. No one called him a hero. He was just doing what needed to be done." Megan nodded slowly. "And you think that's what the Vecthari don't understand? That we're all like that?" "Not all of us," Jake admitted. "But enough of us. Enough to keep going when things get hard. Enough to keep fighting when we should have lost. The Vecthari look at our fragile bodies and think we're weak. They don't realize that our bodies are just containers. The thing that makes us dangerous isn't in our muscles or our bones. It's in here." He tapped his temple. "We decided a long time ago that we weren't going to let the universe beat us. And once a human makes a decision like that, pain and fear and logic don't really matter anymore." 6 months after Jake's rescue. The first Vecthari diplomatic envoy arrived at Earth Station Prime. They came in a sleek silver ship with no weapons visible on its hull. They came with translators and gift offerings and formal requests for peaceful communication. The lead diplomat was Commander Zilthos. Jake watched from the observation gallery as the Vecthari delegation was escorted to the diplomatic chambers. He recognized the tall, thin figure with the shimmering compound eyes. He felt no anger at seeing his former captor. He felt no desire for revenge. He just felt curious. Later, he learned what Zilthos had told the human diplomats. "We have studied 17 species," Zilthos had said. "We have conquered 17 species. Each one broke eventually. Each one had a limit. We applied pressure and they surrendered. It was efficient. It was predictable. It was the foundation of our empire." The commander had paused then, his compound eyes reflecting the lights of the diplomatic chamber. "Your species does not break. Your species bends and bleeds and burns. And then it stands up and asks for more. We have no protocol for that. We have no algorithm. We have only a recommendation from our science council, one that was approved unanimously." He had looked at each of the human diplomats in turn. "Do not make enemies of the humans. The universe is not large enough to contain what they become when they are angry." The treaty was signed that afternoon. Non-aggression, mutual respect, open communication. The Vecthari agreed to stay out of human space, and the humans agreed to notify the Dominion before any expansion into contested territory. It was not friendship. It was not alliance. It was the wary respect of a predator that had discovered something it could not kill. That evening, Jake Dunn sat alone on the observation deck of Earth Station Prime. He looked out at the stars, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and thought about everything that had happened. The pain, the fear, the long days on that alien table, wondering if he would ever see home again. He thought about the Vecthari and their confusion at a species that refused to break. He thought about his grandfather in the coal mines. He thought about every human who had ever faced impossible odds and refused to quit. And somewhere in Vecthari space, a commander named Zilthos was thinking about the same things. He would spend the rest of his career studying humanity, trying to understand the strange force that lived inside those fragile bodies. He would never find a satisfying answer, but he would never forget the pilot who smiled through 3 weeks of torture and asked, "Is that all?" Jake raised his glass to the stars. "Here's to being stubborn," he said quietly. And somewhere across the galaxy, the Vecthari Dominion updated their database. In the file marked Humanity, under the section titled Known Weaknesses, they had added a single entry, none identified. Caution advised. The end. The stars had never looked so beautiful to Catherine Reyes. She stood at the observation window of the horizon's dawn, watching the swirling colors of the nebula outside. Behind her, 3,000 humans laughed, talked, and celebrated. They were about to make history. It was the year 2247, and humanity had finally done what generations had dreamed about. They had crossed the vast emptiness between stars. They had found intelligent life. And now they were about to join a community of alien civilizations that had existed for 10,000 years. Admiral Daniel Harper walked up beside Catherine and handed her a cup of coffee. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent 40 years in the military, but he had always believed that humanity's future lay in friendship, not war. "Nervous?" he asked. Catherine smiled. "Terrified, but also excited. Can you imagine what this means? We are not alone anymore. We never have to be alone again." Daniel nodded slowly. "I remember when I was a boy, my grandfather told me that the universe was too big and too beautiful to be empty. I wish he could see this day." The ship's speakers announced their arrival at Valanthos Prime. Through the window, they could see the massive space station growing larger. It was a marvel of engineering, built by 12 different species working together. Lights of every color blinked along its surface. Ships of strange and wonderful designs moved around it like fish swimming around a coral reef. Catherine gathered her diplomatic team in the main hall. There was Dr. Laura Cole, a cultural specialist who had spent years studying the fragments of alien transmissions that Earth had received. There was Professor Henry Martin, an expert in languages who had helped create the translation programs. And there were dozens of others, each one chosen because they represented the best of humanity. "Remember," Catherine told them, "we are guests here. We come with open hands and open hearts. We offer friendship freely, without conditions. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." The docking procedure took an hour. When the doors finally opened, Catherine led her delegation into the station. The air smelled different, a mixture of scents she could not identify. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, and everywhere she looked, she saw wonders. The Vreth were the first species they met. They were tall, insectoid creatures with 4 arms and large compound eyes. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that shifted between green and blue as they moved. Their leader, a being called Zelthan, approached Catherine with movements that seemed almost graceful. "Welcome, humans," Zelthan said through the translation device. "We have watched your species for many years. Your journey to the stars has been impressive." Catherine bowed her head in respect. "Thank you for receiving us. We come in peace and friendship. We wish only to learn from you and share what we have. The Malari came next. They were beings made of living crystal, their bodies catching and reflecting light in dazzling patterns. They moved slowly, deliberately, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like wind chimes. "Curious creatures," the Malari representative said. "So soft, so fragile. Yet you have crossed the void between stars. Perhaps there is more to you than appearances suggest." Over the next 3 days, Catherine and her team met representatives from all 12 species of the Galactic Concordat. They shared Earth's art and music. They played recordings of Beethoven and showed paintings by Van Gogh. They explained human history, hiding nothing, not even the wars and the suffering. "We have made many mistakes," Catherine admitted during one session. "We have hurt each other. We have damaged our own world. But we have also learned from those mistakes. We have grown. We believe that cooperation is better than conflict. We believe that friendship is stronger than fear." The alien representatives listened without expression. Some nodded. Others remained perfectly still. Catherine could not read their reactions, but she chose to believe they were impressed. At night, she walked through the station with Admiral Harper. They passed gardens filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. They saw alien children playing games that humans could not understand. They felt, for the first time, what it might mean to be part of something larger than themselves. "Do you think they will accept us?" Catherine asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "I think they are curious about us. Whether that curiosity becomes friendship, I cannot say. But we have done everything right. We have been honest. We have been generous. If that is not enough, then nothing will be." What Catherine did not know, what no human could have known, was that in a sealed chamber deep within the station, the leaders of the Concordat were having a very different conversation. Zelton stood before the council, his compound eyes reflecting the cold light of the room. "The humans breed quickly," he said. "They expand without caution. They share their knowledge freely, which means they will learn quickly. In 200 years, perhaps less, they will be as powerful as any of us." The Malari elder shifted, sending rainbows dancing across the walls. "They are soft in their thinking. They speak of friendship as if it were a strategy. They do not understand that the universe rewards strength, not kindness." Another voice spoke, belonging to a species called the Korath. "What do you propose?" Zelton's answer was simple. "A pruning. We have done it before, with other species that showed too much promise. We remove their leaders. We destroy their ability to make war. We reduce them to a manageable level. It is a mercy, really. Quick and clean." The council debated for several hours. Some members expressed doubt. The humans had done nothing wrong. They had come in good faith. But in the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to grow. Far from that dark chamber, Catherine Reyes sat in her quarters and wrote a message to Earth. Her words were full of hope and joy. "They have accepted us," she wrote. "We are finally among the stars as equals. A new chapter in human history begins today." She sent the message with a smile on her face. She did not know that she had less than 72 hours to live. She did not know that the beings she had trusted were already planning the deaths of millions. Outside her window, the stars continued to shine, beautiful and cold and indifferent to the fate of the small, hopeful species that had reached out to touch them. The morning of the 4th day began like any other. Catherine Reyes woke early and prepared for another round of meetings. She chose her best diplomatic uniform, the deep blue one with silver buttons that she had worn when she was first named ambassador. She wanted to look her best for the signing ceremony. Today, humanity would officially become a member of the Galactic Concordat. Today, all their dreams would come true. She met Admiral Harper in the corridor outside her quarters. He looked tired but happy. They walked together toward the great hall where the ceremony would take place. Around them, other humans moved with excitement in their steps. Laura Cole waved to them from across the passage. Professor Martin was practicing his speech under his breath. They never reached the Great Hall. The first explosion tore through the horizon's dawn without warning. Catherine felt the floor shake beneath her feet. Alarms began to scream. Through the windows that lined the corridor, she saw pieces of her ship spinning away into the darkness of space. "What is happening?" she shouted. Admiral Harper grabbed her arm and pulled her toward an emergency shelter. But before they could reach it, the second explosion hit. The walls around them cracked. Air began to rush out through the gaps. Catherine saw Harper's mouth moving, but she could not hear his words over the roaring wind. Then the corridor collapsed, and everything went dark. 3,000 humans died in less than 4 minutes. The horizon's dawn, pride of Earth's fleet, broke apart like a toy crushed by a giant hand. Escape pods launched automatically, but concordate ships waiting outside shot them down one by one. No one was meant to survive. No one was meant to tell Earth what had happened. But the concordate had underestimated human communication technology. 12 light-years away, Commander Nathan Cole sat in the control room of Earth's Mars Defense Station. He was reviewing routine reports when his communications officer suddenly went pale. "Sir," the young woman said, her voice shaking, "we are receiving an emergency transmission from Valanthos Prime. It is fragmentary, but I think you need to hear this." Nathan leaned forward as the broken message played. Through the static, he heard screaming. He heard explosions. And then he heard a voice he recognized, the voice of his wife, Laura. "Nathan, they attacked us. No warning. Everyone dying. I love you. I love—" The transmission cut off. Nathan stared at the speaker for a long moment. His face showed no expression. Inside, something broke that would never heal. Before he could react, more reports flooded in. Concordate warships had appeared near Mars, near Europa, near Titan. They had emerged from hidden positions, places where they must have been waiting for days or weeks. They opened fire on civilian targets without any attempt at communication. The orbital strikes were precise and devastating. On Mars, the city of New Houston vanished under a rain of energy weapons. On Europa, the underwater colonies collapsed as their protective domes shattered. On Titan, the mining settlements burned in fires that could be seen from space. 2 million humans died in the first hour. By the end of the day, the number had risen to 2,400,000. Men, women, and children who had never carried a weapon, who had never wished harm on anyone, were erased from existence. Nathan worked without rest for 72 hours. He coordinated rescue efforts. He organized the few military ships that had survived. He watched the death toll climb higher and higher, and through it all, he did not cry. He did not scream. He simply worked. On Earth, Secretary General Marcus Webb called an emergency session of the United Nations. Leaders from every nation gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. The room was completely silent as Webb walked to the podium. His face was gray with exhaustion and grief. "I will not waste time with speeches," he said. "You have all seen the reports. You know what has happened. The Galactic Concordate, the alliance we trusted, the friends we celebrated, have murdered millions of our people. They did this without warning. They did this without cause. They did this because they feared what we might become." He paused and removed his glasses. He set them on the podium with a soft click that echoed through the silent hall. "We sent them our best. We sent them our kindest. We sent them 3,000 souls who wanted nothing more than to offer friendship. They answered with slaughter. They answered with the murder of children. They answered with genocide." Webb looked out at the assembled leaders. His eyes were hard. "I have been asked what Earth's response will be. I have been asked if we will seek peace, if we will try to understand, if we will attempt to rebuild what has been destroyed. And to those questions, I have only one answer." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. "No more courtesy. Ever." The words hung in the air like the echo of a gunshot. No one spoke. No one moved. Everyone understood that something fundamental had changed in that moment. The humanity that had reached out to the stars with open hands was gone. Something else was being born in its place. Far away, in the halls of the Concordat, alien intelligence officers monitored Earth's communications. They heard Webb's speech. They recorded his words. They analyzed his tone. And then they dismissed it all as the grief of a dying species. "The humans will collapse within a year," Zelton told the council. "They do not have the resources to threaten us. They do not have the technology to reach us. They will mourn their dead and then fade away. This is how it always happens. This is how it happened with the others." The council agreed. The pruning had been successful. The human threat had been eliminated. There was no need for further action. They were wrong. In cities across Earth, in bunkers and basements and hidden laboratories, humanity began to change. Grief turned to anger. Anger turned to cold determination. Scientists who had spent their lives studying peaceful applications of technology began asking different questions. Engineers who had built ships for exploration began designing ships for war. Nathan Cole stood alone in his quarters on Mars, looking at a photograph of his wife. She was smiling in the picture, her dark hair catching the sunlight. He remembered the day it was taken, a vacation on the beaches of Hawaii, back when the future seemed bright and full of promise. He put the photograph in his pocket. He dried his eyes, and then he walked out to begin building the instrument of humanity's revenge. Outside, the stars continued to shine, but now, to human eyes, they looked different. They looked like targets. 18 months passed. The Galactic Concordat watched Earth through their long-range sensors and saw exactly what they expected to see. Humans burying their dead. Humans rebuilding their damaged colonies. Humans trying to recover from the devastating blow they had received. What the Concordat did not see were the things happening underground. Beneath the mountains of Colorado, in a facility that did not exist on any map, Dr. Samuel Ortiz led a team of 300 scientists. They worked in shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their task was simple: understand Concordat technology and make it better. The wreckage from the attack had provided them with pieces of alien weapons, fragments of shield generators, and parts of faster-than-light engines. Samuel had studied these pieces like a man possessed. He slept only when his body refused to stay awake. He ate only when his assistants forced food into his hands. "The Concordat has been using this technology for thousands of years," he told his team. "But they have not improved it. They have not questioned it. They have become lazy with success. We will not make that mistake." In 18 months, Samuel's team did not just copy Concordat technology, they improved it. Their weapons were 30% more powerful. Their shields were twice as efficient. Their engines could cross distances that would have taken Concordat ships days in just a few hours. In another facility, this one hidden beneath the ice of Antarctica, Lieutenant Commander Megan Drake worked on a different problem. She had watched every recording of the attack on Valanthos Prime hundreds of times. She had analyzed every move the Concordat ships made. She had identified their patterns, their weaknesses, their blind spots. "They fight like they have already won," she explained to her tactical students. "They expect their enemies to be afraid. They expect surrender. They do not know how to handle an opponent who is not afraid, who will not surrender, who will keep fighting until the very last breath." Megan developed new combat doctrines, new formations, new strategies. She trained officers who would train other officers. Within 18 months, Earth had created a military force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Not because of superior numbers or better technology, but because of something the Concordat could not understand: absolute commitment. The United Earth government met in secret to discuss their response. Secretary General Webb presented a document that would change the course of human history. He called it the Reciprocity Doctrine. From this day forward, Webb read aloud, any act of aggression against humanity will be returned sevenfold. We will not offer surrender. We will not accept surrender. We will not negotiate. We will not show mercy. We will respond to violence with greater violence until our enemies understand that the cost of attacking humanity is higher than any benefit they could possibly gain. Some leaders objected. They argued that this doctrine made humanity no better than the Concordat. They said that vengeance would only breed more vengeance. They pleaded for reason, for diplomacy, for peace. Webb listened to them all. Then he spoke again. I understand your concerns. I share them. The humanity we were before Valanthos would have agreed with you. But that humanity is dead. It died with 3,000 diplomats who came in peace. It died with 2 million civilians who never carried weapons. We did not choose this path. It was chosen for us, and now we must walk it to the end. The vote was not unanimous, but it was overwhelming. The Reciprocity Doctrine became the official policy of United Earth. Construction began on a new fleet. These ships were not painted white like the diplomatic vessels of the Old World. They were painted black, the color of space itself, the color of the void that had swallowed so many human lives. They carried no names, only numbers. They were designed for one purpose, to kill. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole, promoted 3 times in 18 months, oversaw the final preparations. He had changed in the time since his wife's death. The kindness that had once softened his features was gone. His eyes had become cold, distant, focused on something far beyond the walls of any room he occupied. On the day the fleet was ready to depart, he gathered his officers for a final briefing. They stood in rows before him. Men and women who had volunteered for a mission that might be their last. They wore black uniforms to match their black ships. Their faces showed no fear. I will not lie to you, Nathan said. Many of us will not return. The enemy is numerous. They have held power in this galaxy for 10,000 years. They believe themselves invincible. He paused, letting the silence stretch. But they made a mistake. They thought that human kindness was weakness. They thought that because we offered friendship, we were incapable of war. They thought that killing our diplomats and our civilians would break our spirit. His voice hardened. They were wrong. We came to them with gifts and open hands. We came with art and music and knowledge freely shared. We came offering everything we had. And they spat in our faces. They murdered our families. They burned our homes. Nathan looked at each officer in turn. Now we will teach them what humanity truly is. We are not just the species that offers friendship. We are also the species that never forgets. We are the species that never forgives. We are the species that will cross any distance, pay any price, and sacrifice anything to balance the scales. He raised his hand in a salute that every officer returned. No more courtesy, ever. The Black Fleet departed Earth orbit 3 hours later. 147 ships carrying 50,000 humans who had given up everything, their homes, their families, their futures, for the chance to make the Concordat pay. They vanished into the darkness between stars, and the Concordat, watching from far away, did not understand what they were seeing. Zelton received the intelligence reports and dismissed them. 100 ships, he said to his advisors. We have thousands. What can they possibly hope to accomplish? He would learn the answer soon enough, and when he did, he would wish he had never asked the question. The stars waited, cold and patient, as humanity's vengeance began its long journey across the void. The colony world of Kathros had never known war. For 3,000 years, the Vreth had lived there in peace, protected by the might of the Galactic Concordat. They built beautiful cities. They raised their children. They never imagined that danger could reach them. On the morning of what the Vreth would later call the Day of Shadows, the sky above Kathros turned black. 100 human warships emerged from faster-than-light travel without warning. They did not announce themselves. They did not broadcast demands. They did not offer the chance to surrender. They simply appeared and began firing. Commander Kython, the Vreth military leader of Kathros, was eating his morning meal when the alarms began. He rushed to the command center, his 4 arms struggling to pull on his uniform as he ran. By the time he reached his post, 3 orbital defense platforms had already been destroyed. "Who is attacking us?" he demanded. "What do they want?" His communications officer's compound eyes were wide with fear. "Sir, I cannot identify the ships. They match no known configuration. They are not responding to any of our signals." Kython watched on the main screen as another platform exploded. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision. Their weapons cut through Vreth shields like they were not there. Their tactics were unlike anything he had ever seen in his 200 years of military service. "Broadcast on all frequencies," he ordered. "Tell them we surrender. Tell them we will give them whatever they want." The message went out. It was ignored. The attack continued. On the bridge of the lead human ship, Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole watched the battle unfold. His executive officer, Captain Christina Vance, stood beside him with a datapad in her hands. "Sir, the Vreth are broadcasting surrender on all frequencies," she reported. "They are asking for communication." Nathan did not take his eyes from the screen. "Have they stopped fighting?" "No, sir. Their remaining ships are still engaging our forces." "Then we have nothing to discuss." Christina hesitated. She had known Nathan before the massacre when he was still capable of smiling. She understood his pain. But she also remembered the man he used to be. "Sir, if they genuinely want to surrender..." Nathan turned to look at her. His eyes were empty. "Humanity tried communication once. We sent 3,000 of our best people to communicate. Ambassador Reyes spent 3 days communicating. She explained our history. She shared our art. She offered our friendship without conditions, and they murdered her anyway." He turned back to the screen. "We are not here to communicate. We are here to teach. Continue the attack." The battle lasted 11 minutes. Every orbital defense platform was destroyed. Every military ship was reduced to floating debris. Every ground installation that could have launched a counterattack was eliminated. The human fleet worked with cold efficiency, like surgeons removing a tumor. When it was over, Kathros lay exposed and helpless. Escape pods launched from the planet's surface, carrying Vreth civilians trying to flee. The human fleet let them go. They were not the target. They were the witnesses. Nathan opened a channel to the planet below. For the first time, humans spoke to the Concordat since the massacre. "This is Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole of the United Earth Defense Force. 18 months ago, you attacked our diplomatic vessel at Valanthos Prime. You killed 3,000 humans who came to you in peace. You then attacked our colonies and killed 2 million more. You did this without warning. You did this without provocation. You did this because you believed we were too weak to respond." He paused. "We are not weak. We were kind. There is a difference. Today, we have demonstrated that difference. Your military capability on this world has been eliminated. Your civilians have been spared, not because you deserve mercy, but because we want survivors. We want witnesses. We want the entire galaxy to know what happens when human kindness is repaid with murder." He ended the transmission. Within hours, the news spread across Concordat space. Ships carrying refugees from Kathros told their story to anyone who would listen. The humans had come. The humans had destroyed everything. The humans had not listened to pleas for surrender. The Malari High Council gathered in emergency session. Their crystalline bodies flickered with colors of fear and confusion. For the first time in their long history, they faced an enemy that did not play by the rules they understood. "Perhaps we should contact them," one elder suggested. "Offer reparations, return the remains of their dead, apologize publicly." Another elder, older and wiser, responded with a question that silenced the chamber. "Would any of that have stopped us 18 months ago? Would we have spared them if they had begged? We have taught the galaxy that kindness is weakness. Now the humans are teaching us that the lesson applies to everyone." More reports arrived. A Korath mining station had been destroyed. A Mala'ari research outpost had gone silent. A Vreth patrol fleet had simply disappeared. The human fleet had divided into 12 separate task forces, one for each member species of the Concordat. They struck without pattern, without warning, without mercy. They destroyed military targets and left civilians alive to tell the story. Zelthan, the Vreth High Speaker who had first proposed the pruning, received hourly updates on the destruction. With each report, he felt something he had not experienced in centuries: genuine fear. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his advisors. "They are one species, one small, soft, fragile species. How are they doing this?" No one had an answer. In his private chambers, Zelton found an old recording from the diplomatic summit at Valanthos Prime. He watched Ambassador Reyes explaining human history. He heard her talk about their wars and their peace. He saw the hope in her eyes. "We believe that cooperation is better than conflict," she had said. "We believe that friendship is stronger than fear." Zelthan had laughed at those words then. He was not laughing now. The recording continued, showing humans sharing their art and music, showing them offering gifts without asking for anything in return, showing them trusting completely without suspicion or reservation. For the first time, Zelthan understood what humanity truly was. They were not weak. They had never been weak. They had simply chosen to be kind. And by betraying that choice, the Concordat had unleashed something terrible. Outside his window, the stars burned with the same cold light they always had. But now Zelthan looked at them differently. Now he knew that somewhere in that darkness, black ships were moving, carrying humans who had given up kindness forever. And they were coming for him. 5 years had passed since the massacre at Valanthos Prime. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Galactic Concordat no longer existed. The alliance that had ruled the Orion Arm for 10,000 years had crumbled like sand in a hurricane. 7 of the 12 member species had surrendered unconditionally to Earth. 3 had been reduced to pre-spaceflight status, their ships destroyed, their stations dismantled, their ability to travel between stars removed completely. The remaining 2, including the Vreth, existed only as scattered refugees, moving from system to system in damaged ships, never staying in one place long enough to rebuild. Earth had not claimed their territory. Humanity had not established colonies in former Concordat space. They had not demanded tribute or resources or slaves. They had simply demonstrated repeatedly and thoroughly what happened to those who mistook human kindness for weakness. Fleet Admiral Nathan Cole returned to Earth for the first time in 4 years. His ship landed at the Geneva spaceport on a gray morning in October. A crowd had gathered to welcome him, but he did not stop to acknowledge them. He had somewhere else to be. The memorial wall stood in a park near the old United Nations building. It was made of black stone, polished so smooth that it reflected the sky. On its surface, carved in letters of silver, were the names of everyone who had died at Valanthos Prime and in the colony attacks. 3,047 diplomats, 2,400,000 civilians. Each name represented a life, a family, a story that had been cut short. Nathan found his wife's name near the center of the wall. Laura Cole. He reached out and touched the letters with his fingertips. The stone was cold. "I kept my promise," he said quietly. They paid for what they did. Every single one of them paid. He stood there for a long time, not moving, not speaking. Around him, other visitors came and went. Some left flowers, some wept. Some simply stood in silence, remembering. Secretary General Marcus Webb found Nathan still at the wall as the sun began to set. Webb was older now, his hair completely white, his face lined with the weight of the decisions he had made. This was his final year in office. He had led humanity through its darkest hour and its greatest triumph. Now, he was ready to rest. "The council is waiting for you," Webb said. "They want to honor you. Medals, ceremonies, speeches, the usual things." Nathan did not turn around. "Do they understand what we have become?" Webb moved to stand beside him. "I think they understand what we had to become. There is a difference." "Is there?" Nathan finally looked at the old man. "I used to believe in everything Catherine Reyes stood for. Kindness, openness, trust. Now I cannot even remember what that felt like." Webb nodded slowly. "I know. I feel the same way. We lost something at Valanthos that we will never get back. Our innocence, perhaps. Our faith in the possibility of peaceful coexistence." He put a hand on Nathan's shoulder. "But we survived. Humanity survived. And maybe someday we can find our way back to what we were. Just with open eyes this time." The next morning, Webb addressed the assembled representatives of Earth and its new allies. The Great Hall was filled with humans and aliens alike, species that had surrendered to Earth and now sought to rebuild their relationship with humanity on different terms. "We stand at a crossroads," Webb began. 5 years ago, we reached out to the galaxy with friendship and were answered with betrayal. We responded with force that shook the foundations of civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. We proved that humanity is capable of terrible things when provoked." He paused, looking out at the assembled faces. "But that is not all we are. That is not all we want to be. Today, I announce Earth's new policy toward the galaxy. We remain open to contact. We will trade with species that approach us honestly. We will share knowledge with those who seek to learn. We will even offer friendship to those who earn our trust." His voice hardened. "But let the record show what happens when that friendship is betrayed. Let every species in this galaxy understand that human kindness comes with a price. We will give you everything we have if you treat us fairly. But if you harm our people, if you break our trust, if you mistake our generosity for weakness, you will learn what the Concordat learned, and you will learn it in terms you cannot misunderstand." The hall was silent. Every being present understood that they were hearing more than a speech. They were hearing a warning. 300 years later, a young Vreth historian named Kylus published a scholarly work that would become required reading in universities across the galaxy. She had survived the war as a child, carried to safety by her parents on one of the refugee ships that had fled Concordat space. She had grown up hearing stories about the humans, the terrible and wonderful creatures who had destroyed everything her people had built. She titled her work, "The Human Paradox, a study of the most generous and most terrible species in galactic history." In it, she examined the centuries before the massacre, when humans had dreamed of reaching the stars and finding friends among them. She studied their art and music, their philosophy and science. She read the speeches of Ambassador Reyes and the letters that ordinary humans had written to the stars, hoping that someone would hear them. She also studied the war. She interviewed survivors, both human and alien. She walked through the ruins of worlds that had never recovered. She saw the scars that humanity had left on the galaxy and tried to understand how the same species could be capable of such kindness and such destruction. Her conclusion, the final line of her work, was quoted by scholars for generations afterward. It appeared in textbooks and philosophical treatises. It was carved on monuments and whispered in warning to children. They came to us with gifts and open hearts. We killed them for it. They taught us, in terms we could not misunderstand, that their kindness was always a choice, never a weakness. The galaxy remembers, and the galaxy did remember. In the centuries that followed, humanity became known as the most reliable trading partner, the most generous donor in times of crisis, and the most dangerous enemy any species could make. They helped rebuild worlds they had destroyed. They shared technology freely with former enemies. They sent aid to species struck by natural disasters without asking for anything in return. But they never forgot, and they never let anyone else forget either. On the anniversary of the massacre, every human colony fell silent for 1 hour. Ships stopped in space. Factories paused their work. People stood still wherever they were and remembered those who had died with hope in their hearts. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Black Fleet still waited, never decommissioned, never dismantled, a silent reminder that humanity's kindness was a gift they chose to give. A gift that could always be taken away.